What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I'm your host, Pat Dineen, and this is my review of AEW Dynamite, which took place September 27th, 2023. This was a very good show leading into WrestleDream this Sunday in Seattle, Washington at the Climate Pledge Arena. And this episode of Dynamite, by the way, took place at the First Bank Center in Broomfield, Colorado. But this is the first time in a very long time that I actually enjoyed the non-wrestling stuff more than I did the actual wrestling matches themselves. We all know AEW puts together phenomenal wrestling matches. Our biggest frustration usually lies in the lack of storyline or follow through and so on. But I mean, it was unfortunate to hear about Adam Cole's injury that he sustained. We'll get to that later in the show. So speedy recovery to Adam Cole, baby. But MJF, Switchblade Jay White, Jay White showing up from AEW Collision. That's where they're typically shown every Saturday night. And so we're looking forward to this Jay White MJF feud. Of course, Swerve Strickland and Hangman Adam Page taking place this Sunday at WrestleDream. Even the very end of AEW Dynamite, when we saw those four masked men dressed in all black attacking Switchblade Jay White. Who could it be? So I'm going to discuss who I think it was. And really interested to see how that goes. One of them were wearing the typical devil mask that MJF has been donning since last year. I believe it was that at All Out that he wore. When he made his return, since not seeing him since Double or Nothing or so. So yeah, a lot to talk about. We're going to get into it right now. Now, WrestleDream, that takes place, again, Sunday, Seattle, Washington, at the Climate Pledge Arena. Right now, it's a 10-match card. You know TK, he'll probably add in a couple matches throughout the course of the next couple days, even if it's the kickoff show, 0 hour. So I'm going to assume that we're probably going to get somewhere around 12 matches. So add 2 more, what's the big deal? I am glad to see that he has the 3 Washington natives on this card. Of course, Bryan Danielson, Swerve Strickland, and of course, Darby Allin. So they're all in great feuds going into WrestleDream. And again, we're going to talk about all that during the course of this show, but let's get right into it. The opening match for the AEW International Championship, we saw Rey Fenix come out with Alex Abrahantes. First title defense since winning the belt, defeating Jon Moxley last week at Dynamite Grand Slam, Queens, New York, Arthur Ashe Stadium. So we all know by now, a week has passed, and Rey Fenix wasn't supposed to win, right? Jon Moxley, he got injured. He was concussed. There was all kinds of controversy surrounding the referee, Rick Knox. Some were calling for his job. They said this is not the first time that Rick Knox has made these flubs in important matches nonetheless. So, that's a whole other story. I just want to stick to what we saw on Wednesday night. But nonetheless, Rey Fenix is the champ. Speedy recovery to Moxley. Again, I believe it's just a concussion, so not to make light of it, but if that's all he's dealing with, hopefully we'll see him when he's ready to get back in action. So his opponent, I was very surprised to hear the theme music of one Double J Jeff Jarrett as his initial opponent for this international championship. I mean, if that doesn't tell you that Rey Fenix was not supposed to win and they didn't have any plans as far as his potential feuds, it really looks like they're like, hey, Jeff, take a break from your backstage role and go get out there. We've seen Double J from time to time, and I like him. Don't get me wrong, but it's not exactly the first guy who I would have on the list of title defenses for Rey Fenix to go up against. But so that's what we got on Dynamite. He came out with his wife, Karen Jarrett, Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh. Now, one thing I fully anticipated, during this match was a lot of outside interference, and that's exactly what took place. So Fenix appeared to be injured throughout this match, his right knee specifically. He was pretty banged up from the match against Moxley, so I'll give him that. But back to the interference. Now, Aubrey Edwards was the referee for this match, and she had prior history with Karen Jarrett. She even laced up the boots a few months ago to go wrestle in a mixed tag match against Karen Jarrett. So Aubrey, definitely not the biggest fan of Karen. So Karen was on her way to attack and injured Rey Fenix on the outside of the ring when suddenly Aubrey stopped her and ended up knocking her to the ground. After that, we got a very loud Aubrey chant from the fans, so that was good to see. Sanjay Dutt distracted Aubrey on the apron a little bit later on, while Jeff Jarrett hit Fenix with a low blow. I thought that could have been it, but could not score the pinfall. Shortly thereafter, there was a few close calls as far as Fenix was concerned, but he got his foot on the rope to break the pin again. Phoenix ends up winning with a cradle to get out of Dodge, battered, bruised, again, mainly from Moxley. I mean, it's just the life of a pro wrestler in general, right? But, from the match with Moxley last week, that was brutal. And, he made it through. He made it throughout all the interferences and stuff. So I'm curious to see what we find out during this show who his next opponent will be. So before I go any further about Rey Fenix's next challenger, let's just move on to what we got next. Now, AEW and the commentary team, they were talking about Adam Cole leaping from the Dynamite stage last week and landing awkwardly. We were all afraid that he had injured himself. He was pretty hobbled immediately when he was finally ringside for MJF when he was going up against Samoa Joe. That's why he ran out there to help his buddy, his bro Chacho, as they call one another, right? Helping coach MJF throughout the match. So now this led to a segment where Max and Adam Cole, Max being MJF, not used to calling him Max, but MJF and Cole were out on a boat to cheer him up from the injury that he sustained, even though they didn't go into detail yet as far as what was wrong with Adam Cole. So MJF mentions him being on the phone with Roderick Strong last week, and not being able to come out to the ring at the start of the match because he was still on the phone with Roddy backstage. MJF asks Cole to hold his beer. Now MJF gets up, goes to the back of the boat to get his Dynamite Diamond ring. We've seen him do this on a couple of occasions with Adam Cole specifically, where it looked like this is the time he's going to turn on him, take him out, and here we go, But that did not happen. No, it was very close. So Cole then asks Max, without even, turning around to look at him, he says, you didn't bring me out on this boat to hit me with your Dynamite Diamond ring and throw me overboard, right? MJF, visibly stunned by this, froze for a second. And he says, that's the last thing I would do. That's insane. Cole says, we need to talk about a healthy friendship, and it's having more than one friend. It's normal and it's healthy. I know you're not accustomed to that, Max. You don't trust anybody. You really don't like anybody. MJF says, if this is normal, I support you. He also says, I almost got caught the last time. I almost threw someone overboard. Then Cole goes on to tell Max, he goes, I think I got one, as they're fishing on the boat, right? Ends up being the Big Show, Paul White, in a duck float. Looked like he was wearing his Captain Insano singlet from, back in the day. What was that, Waterboy? And White got on the boat. They all had a drink together. Very unexpected, but funny. These Adam Cole MJF segments, whether it's in the ring or the video packages, are always bizarre, but they always end up being very good, and they definitely deliver. And when I get to their segment in just a moment, I'm going to miss it. I really am, if Cole is gone for a significant amount of time with this injury he sustained. So we saw a brief clip of Don Callis and Konosuke Takeshita in Tokyo, Japan, allegedly hunting for Kota Ibushi over the weekend. Now, that match at WrestleDream, as I mentioned on my last AEW review, I believe it was Collision, and from this 10-match card, that is still the match I'm looking forward to the most. There's a couple up there, but I got to say the Don Callis family of Konosuke Takeshita, Sammy Guevara, and now Will Ospreay going up against the likes of Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, and Kota Ibushi. That is going to be great. I mean, there is a ton of star power in that match, so that's going to be good. Shortly after that, Renee Paquette is in the center of the ring, introducing Konosuke Takeshita and Don Callis. Sammy Guevara makes his entrance shortly thereafter. Now, he still has the same theme song, I believe, but he has new graphics. It's very Al Pacino, Scarface-esque. And they show footage from Ibushi's gym over the weekend, taking out several members. Again, this is when Callis and Konosuke Takeshita were over there. And they took out several members that were included in the gym of Ibushi. They even ended up taking out Ibushi. Callis hit Ibushi with an umbrella. Takeshita hit Ibushi with a kettlebell, knocking him out cold. Callis tells him he's not safe in Tokyo, Seattle on Sunday, or anywhere for that matter. Now, Guevara says, they paint me out to be the bad guy when I'm the hero. He follows that up by saying he was champion and did pay-per-views without Chris Jericho. Every time he would fly high, Jericho would clip his wings. Again, at this moment, this is the match that I am most looking forward to. And I think that's what I got to stick with, right? I got to say, I'm very much looking forward to Swerve and Hangman Adam Page, though, too. They really got me going towards the main event segment, which I'll get to in a little bit, of Dynamite, that revved it up even more. These last couple of weeks, Hangman's always been a solid promo, but Swerve Strickland, man, he is just getting better and better on the microphone, in the ring. And, his look, he gained so much muscle mass over the past several months. Hanging out with the Mogul Embassy, I could see how these things happen. The Gates of Agony, they're huge. Brian Cage, he's a monster. So he's hanging around the right company, that's for sure. Jumping into a clip that was shown happening after Collision on Saturday, we saw Ricky Starks and Wheeler Yuta having a face-to-face backstage. In short, Yuta ends up calling Starks an entitled prick. I love this intensity from Wheeler Yuta because I know he's got a mean streak in him. He's been a member of the Blackpool Combat Club for the better part of a year plus, and we know he can throw down with the best of them. But he just, at the very same time, he seems so mild mannered, as odd as that sounds, because he never really gets too engulfed in any promos or any any segments where he has to talk. And I get it. Let your actions do the talking. I am completely all right with that. But at the very same time, I like to hear a little bit too. The gift of gab is nice every now and again. So I love that intensity. Long story short, Yuta challenges Ricky Starks to a match at WrestleDream. It's now confirmed. And so, yeah, so we'll see Willa Yuta and Ricky Starks go at it. I fully anticipate Ricky Starks to win, especially after taking a couple L's to Bryan Danielson, which is no sweat off his back. Hey, Bryan Danielson is a legend in the world of pro wrestling, that's for sure. But I do think he should be taking down Willa Yuta, that's for sure. Somebody else in the Blackpool Combat Club. We had a triple threat match to see who's going to become the #1 contender for Rey Fenix's International Championship. Now, this match will take place next Wednesday on AEW Dynamite. It's going to be the 4-year anniversary show of Dynamite, which is mind-blowing because I remember the very first episode of Dynamite, October 2nd, 2019. It was a very busy week for pro wrestling because I remember that Friday was the premiere of SmackDown on Fox. Unfortunately, yeah, that's where Brock squashed Kofi. Not to put a damper on things, at least The Rock was there, right? But anyway, that was a very great week. I remember in wrestling, very exciting time, and 4 years just like that. I remember, the Inner Circle forming or debuting on that episode, and of course seeing the Elite, Kenny Omega, Cody, and so on. So it's just unbelievable how time flies. But anyway, the three competitors in this match, one half of the Young Bucks, Nick Jackson, Brian Cage, and Claudio Castagnoli. So right then and there, we had members of the Elite, the Mogul Embassy, and the Blackpool Combat Club yet again. Nick Jackson and Brian Cage were just in the ring the other day for Rampage Grand Slam, where the Elite defeated the Mogul Embassy, taking those Ring of Honor 6-man tag team championships from them. So here we are yet again. Now, Claudio did his Claudio swing to Brian Cage, which is pretty amazing that he was able to swing him around 10 times, although he's only 6 feet tall. 268 pounds, probably with not even an ounce of body fat. That guy is, like I said a few minutes ago, a monster. Muscles on top of muscles. Makes Scott Steiner in his heyday look small. But anyway, very impressive. And so was this. We got to see a suplex spot from Brian Cage, so we got him back to Claudio coming off of the second rope. So that was very nice as well. In short, surprised but not surprised. Nick Jackson pinned Brian Cage to become the #1 contender. So next Wednesday on that 4-year anniversary show, we'll have Nick Jackson versus Rey Fenix. I mean, how many times have we seen these guys mix it up? And I'm not complaining, but whether it's been the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Bros or even in singles action, don't get me wrong, this is going to be a very exciting, great match for an anniversary show nonetheless. But at the very same time, this is the second time in less than a week that Brian Cage has been pinned by a member of the Elite. Remember, last Friday at Rampage Grand Slam, Brian Cage was pinned by Hangman Adam Page, where they lost those 6-man tag titles, the Ring of Honor 6-man tag titles that they held for a little over 300 days. So Brian Cage, I know he can't be thrilled about his booking as of late and constantly losing to the Elite. So hopefully they get him back to his winning ways, because the end of September has not been very pleasant for one Brian Cage. The Righteous had a segment. Vincent went and said, "It's easier to forgive your enemy than it is to forgive fake friends." He finished up with his saying, "Dig what I'm saying, man?" It's kind of eerie but cool at the same time, alluding to MJF and Adam Cole's so-called friendship the past few months to be fraudulent. We all have our opinions and our debates, and we've even seen hints or possibilities, just even on this episode, where it looked like MJF was going to clock Adam Cole right off the boat with that Dynamite diamond ring, but didn't, thanks to Adam Cole, making sure, saying, "Hey, Max, you didn't bring me out here to, throw me overboard, right?" So we all have our thoughts, even though they've been top sellers in merchandise. They've been getting all kinds of clicks across social media the last 4 or 5 months, and it's honestly been fun to watch them on TV because we know they both can wrestle. They're both entertaining as hell. In-ring, video packages, backstage segments, you name it. So it's been really good. Now look, they may be onto something. They may very well be onto something, the Righteous. And will they find any more cracks in the foundation of Better Than You, Baby, their tag team? So those two teams were set to clash this Sunday at WrestleDream, and for the Ring of Honor tag titles that Cole and MJF hold. But we'll find out in just a moment's time, what is now going to happen due to Adam Cole's injury, unfortunately. So MJF and Adam Cole made their way to the ring, Cole on crutches with a brace on his left leg. MJF pulled up a chair for Adam Cole to sit in the center of the ring. Adam Cole said, "Who's ready for story time with Adam Cole, baby?" Adam Cole said, "Unfortunately, this is a sad chapter of the story." He said, "Last week's incident at Dynamite Grand Slam, he injured his ankle really bad. His ankle pretty much exploded, broke in 3 places, and he tore ligaments. He did everything he could, but unfortunately, he has to get surgery." Cole went on to say, "There's nothing more soul-crushing, but will do everything in his power to get back as soon as humanly possible." Cole and MJF, visibly distraught. Cole went on to say they're going to relinquish. MJF says, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on a second, bro, Chacho." He says to Colorado, "Do you want to see us relinquish our titles to the righteous?" So MJF said he takes full responsibility for Adam Cole getting hurt last week because he needed him out there. MJF said he knows how much those Ring of Honor tag titles mean to him, and they will be there waiting for him when he returns, and that he is one of the best wrestlers in the world. And, MJF has adored Adam Cole, quite honestly. Years ago when he was at Creative Pro Wrestling Academy, that list, right? That list of dream opponents that he wanted to face one day. He had 3 names. 1, he could currently wrestle, and 2, he'd like to wrestle in the future. The first one was Bronson, who's also ironically with AEW, one half of the Iron Savages. And I forget in which order, but I believe it was Cody Rhodes and Adam Cole. So he means every bit of it when he thinks the world of Adam Cole. He says that he will go to Seattle to defend those tag titles in a handicap match because we're better than you, baby. So I'm wishing MJF all the best. Do I think he's going to come out victorious? I don't. But hey, maybe he'll surprise us and hold on to those Ring of Honor tag titles just a little bit longer. Now, immediately after that, Roderick Strong makes his way out yelling, "Adam," 3 times. Very annoying. In a wheelchair, wearing socks with his wife Marina Shafir's face on them, I believe. He's with the Kingdom, Matt Taven, Mike Bennett, no Maria Kanellis, unfortunately, and says, "I need you more than ever right now. It's an emergency." MJF took the high road for once. He says, "I learned something on that boat. I might not like him, but I respect you enough to know that he's your boy. So you go do what you got to do. Just know I'll be here waiting for you when you come back." A true bromance, right? So MJF hugs Cole. Adam Cole rolls out the ring. Cole on crutches, goes up to the ramp. And now MJF says, "Everybody give it up one more time for Adam Cole." As they leave, MJF gets interrupted immediately by Switchblade Jay White and Bullet Club Gold coming over from AEW Collision, where they've pretty much been the last 2-3 months since the beginning of Collision, mid-June. Jay White enters the ring, both men in opposite corners. And MJF goes on to call Jay very talented, but says, "You're tofu. Where me, MJF, I'm filet mignon." He says, "Funny thing about tofu, it takes on the flavor of anything you want it to, but you need to add flavor to it." MJF adds, "You were handed the keys to one of the greatest wrestling factions of all time, New Japan, Bullet Club. But if I were to pluck it all away, I am left with nothing but bland, boring, tasteless tofu." MJF says that White is all hype. He said, "If I were you, I would leave this ring and not continue talking smack to my pores. And that one day everyone will say that, sure, Jay's good, but he's no Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Because I'm better than you, and you know it." Now, I pretty much touched upon the majority of what MJ said, the meat and potatoes of that promo, but it was delivered incredibly strong, and he took it to Jay White, I gotta say. But I will say this before I go forward: Jay White definitely had quite the response. Did not get intimidated, nervous, none of that, which I fully did not expect him to at all. It's Jay White; he can hold his own in the ring, wrestling, and on the microphone. So Jay White started off by saying, he's a little bit let down as the crowd chants tofu. Says, "Something a little bit wrong with you these days, Max. I think you're distracted by your new bromance." Adam Cole, baby, says they don't love you like they love Adam Cole. MJF chant breaks out, give MJF a little more reassurance, I suppose. So Jay White says this is all kind of his fault, because if he didn't temporarily end Adam Cole's career at the first Forbidden Door, June of 2022, then maybe you don't develop a soft spot for him. Become a tag team, best buds, win Ring of Honor tag team gold together, main event Wembley Stadium together. You don't have him try to break your neck at Wembley Stadium. But I guess you got him back because his ankle's broken, and that's your fault. I'm sure your neck's hurting from Samoa Joe last week at Dynamite Grand Slam, so I think I've been ruining your life from afar for a little while now." Jay White proceeds to say, "I'm here now, up close and personal, to ruin it in the flesh." Jay White says he's going to take the AEW World Championship from him. Says MJF doesn't seem so elite when it comes to the Switchblade, Jay White. Jay White, the man who single-handedly sold out Madison Square Garden and the United Center. I'm the only Grand Slam champion who matters, the catalyst of professional wrestling. Jay says, at the end of the day, you will have them and they will have you, meaning the fans. And I will have the Triple B, meaning the Big Burberry belt. Baby. MJF was about to go after Jay White, but White rolled out of the ring. This was a great counter by Jay White. Overall, fantastic segment, well executed by both men. Really looking forward to this feud between MJF and Jay White. Both just phenomenal on the mic. We know MJF can go, but it's not easy to follow up what MJF has to say at all. You know, I've seen the best of the best in there on the mic, and I'm not going to go as far as to say they've stuttered or stumbled, but you could see they've definitely sweat a little bit. You know, when MJF and Adam Cole went up against one another, jab for jab initially on the microphone, was that late winter, early spring. That kind of had Adam Cole on his heels a little bit. Even as of recent, a couple weeks ago, Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe did his thing. He gets tired of talking. He just wants to put you in the coquina clutch. But even Joe was sweating a little bit, quite literally. Like, all right, this guy is. They all know that MJF is gold on the mic, and even Switchblade Jay White from Bullet Club Gold, knew MJF was going to go out there and do his thing. But hey, you know what? Jay White, he delivered very strong. I liked what I saw. And if they're that damn good on the microphone with one another, I'm really hoping and do believe that they'll make magic in the ring together whenever they do decide to clash, whether it ends up happening at Full Gear in November. Whenever this does happen, whenever this does culminate, these two, I am here for it 1000%. Following that, Jim Ross had to sit down with Christian, the new TNT champion, officially, even though he had been wearing Luchasaurus' belt around his waist, over his shoulder for months now. We had a sit down with Darby Allin and Christian Cage. Christian said he will walk out of Darby's hometown of Seattle TNT champion. Christian went on to say he asked for this 2 out of 3 falls match to expose Darby Allin, to show that he is the better wrestler when push comes to shove. Christian then goes on, takes another low blow, as he always does, verbally, and said, is your uncle going to be in attendance? Now, his uncle passed away many years ago, and says he sounded like a great guy, taking his 5-year-old nephew out for a joyride while intoxicated. And Christian went on to say, bring everybody, bring your whole family, friends, you name it. Darby said, if you have the balls, you would do this without Luchasaurus. Then Cage says, you think you're helping that boy, regarding Nick Wayne? Cage then follows that by saying, you're not the mentor he needs. He needs a champion. He needs a real man, alluding to himself. Someone who doesn't paint his face to hide his true identity. Darby starts wiping off the paint with a bottle of water and says, I don't need this, don't need this pain. I am who I am. And Cage pretty much just said, he'll be the new face of TNT now and forever. So that's going to be another very good match. One I'm looking forward to. It's not my top 2 or 3, but it's one I'll definitely be locked in on and see what happens. I just have this funny feeling that Nick Wayne, sooner than later, is going to turn on Darby Allin. And I say that because if you remember how quickly Darby Allin forgave AR Fox, was it 4 or 5 weeks ago, after Swerve kicked Fox out of the Mogul Embassy, and Nick Wayne addressed Darby on a couple of occasions like, hey, you just welcomed AR Fox with open arms after him and Swerve attacked me at my place, at my ring, left me beaten, battered, bloodied, ripped my shirt, broke a picture, I believe, of him and his father, his late father who passed a few years back. And so I feel like that left a really bad taste in the mouth of Nick Wayne, and he's been feeling some type of way ever since. So don't be surprised as early as this Sunday that Nick Wayne is to potentially turn on Darby Allin. They have a feud from there. And Nick Wayne could be joining forces with Christian Cage, taking him on with the mentor role as Christian's trying to provide. While we're on the topic, I'm very curious because there's been a few names floating around the last couple of days. Of course, Jade Cargill made her way and officially signed with WWE, former TBS champion, for 500 plus days. And so all the best to Jade Cargill, but there's been a couple of names that have been said to be making their way to AEW very soon. Edge, Adam Copeland, formerly known as Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné. So I feel like we're going to see one of them at WrestleDream. I'm not sure which one, but I do feel like we're going to get one of them. And that's another thing. I bring that up now because what if we see Adam Copeland show up in some capacity, edging Christian? Or whether he's a friend or foe of Christian, that really got me interested there. So I think when Copeland does go to AEW, whenever that time is, I feel like we're going to see 2 things happen. He's going to have a feud with Christian, and then, of course, they're going to be a tag team at some point. Not sure which order. I would assume they're going to have the feud first and then become a tag team, hopefully capture that tag team gold that the Hardys were hoping to do last year until unfortunately Jeff ran into that whole mess, um, with the DUI or DWI situation. But really looking forward to seeing Copeland, and of course Mercedes whenever she shows up. That's going to be big time. So excited for that as well. Moving forward here, we have a matchup here. 4 men involved. Orange Cassidy came out with Hook. Penta was there, Matt Jackson, and of course Austin Gunn. Now this Sunday there will be a 4-way tag team match, and the winner will become the #1 contender for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. This match, however, on Dynamite had no stipulation. It's just a little prelude to what we're going to see come this Sunday at WrestleDream. Anyway, this match ended with Orange Cassidy hitting Nick Jackson with an orange punch to get the victory. Nothing was at stake again, but looking forward to what happens Sunday in this matchup. If I had to make an early prediction, again, I'm doing my prediction Sunday morning on the AEW Collision Review. I don't think it's going to be Orange Cassidy and Hook, just being that they won this match, right? Cassidy got the win over Matt Jackson. And the Elite have been booked very strong lately. Again, winning the Ring of Honor 6-man tag titles last Friday. Nick Jackson winning the #1 contendership for the International Championship against Rey Fenix coming up. Because I do believe FTR will defeat Aussie Open. That's going to be a great match. And I can't believe already it's been almost 6 months that FTR has been the AEW World Tag Team Champions. Pretty crazy. I would have to probably go with the Guns. I see Austin and Colton Gunn going up against whoever the AEW World Tag Champs are, likely to be FTR. Rekindle a little feud from when they won the titles, right? When FTR won those tag titles. I was at that episode of Dynamite April 5th, 2023, Nassau Coliseum, or however they refer to it now, NYCB Live. In Long Island. That was MJF night. How could I forget? The Guns came out to Many Men. That was a great entrance, but they did lose the tag titles that night. And this may be a full circle moment where the Guns get that opportunity against FTR again, win, lose, or draw. So I'm going to go with the Guns come Sunday. Moving forward here. And by the way, one of the other reasons I'm picking the Guns for that match is again, Orange Cassidy won this match, removing them. Matt Jackson, part of Nick Jackson and Hangman Adam Page, being that they wanted the Ring of Honor 6-man tags just last Friday. I don't think they're going to be in title contention. And then you go and look at Penta, right? He may not have gold, but his brother does. Rey Fenix, international champion, whether it was supposed to happen or not. He is the champion when all is said and done. So by process of elimination, I'm also going with the Guns. That's why. Finally, we got some women's wrestling. We got Julia Hart with Brody King versus Willow Nightingale. Now, can Julia make it 27 straight victories? We'll see. She's been on some streak as of late. Willow walked to the ring with a bandage over her left eye after being sprayed with the black mist over the weekend by Julia Hart. Now, I thought Julia was going to win going into this match with Willow having 2 eyes. But being that one was covered up, I said, all right, well, about that, I guess this is a foregone conclusion. However, that wasn't so, at least, throughout the course of this match. Early on, the bandage came off. Saw the noticeable dark ring around the left eye of Willow. Now, Julia escaped to the outside at one point, goes under the ring as Willow turns to the corner. Looking for Julia, Brody King steps in her way. Julia creeps out from behind Willow on the other side, then takes out her left knee with a vicious chop block, knocking her right to the ground. Now, Julia ends up winning this match with a moonsault. The match went the distance several times. It looked like Willow Nightingale was actually going to get the win. I knew personally, as most probably would have believed, that she was not going to finally lose after being undefeated for the better part of 17 months. Going into a matchup Sunday at WrestleDream against the TBS champion, Chris Statlander, who, by the way, as Will Washington mentioned the other day on Twitter, I said during the last AEW episode, that was the last time Julia Hart lost, was against Chris Statlander 17 months ago on an episode, I believe, of AEW Dark Elevation. So we knew she was going to get the win. Now, post-match, Julia locked in her Heartless submission on Willow, unrelenting until Chris Statlander came out. Julia Hart was able to escape the ring just in time. And I can honestly say that I am really looking forward to the match between these two. I really am. Now, during the WrestleDream media call on Tuesday, Tony Khan had this to say about Julia Hart, and I quote, "Julia is someone who's been with us since Daly's Place, their Jacksonville days during COVID. It's crazy to think of how young she is. She was a teenager when she came to us in AEW. There are a lot of great stars who came out of that Daly's Place era. It really showed that we could have a great developmental place with Daly's. We've seen this with top stars like The Acclaim, Powerhouse Hobbs, Julia Hart, just to name a few. These are all people who are with us wrestling on Dark Elevation through the different shows in the pandemic, and they all came out better when they came in. Julia Hart is a pleasure to work with. She's a gifted athlete. She has a lot of great ideas, and she always shows up. The cheerleader gimmick was initially her idea, and she was great with it. But when the opportunity came for her to join the House of Black, she really ran with it. She's gone a year and a half, 26-0, now 27, and has a big match on Dynamite, as he mentioned, with Willow Nightingale, as we saw. And Chris Statlander being the last person to beat Julia, April 2022. Julia was in the middle of a major transition in her persona at that time. She was still the cheerleader, but was wearing the eye patch and was beginning her next phase into her career. House of Black has worked wonders for her. It really has. He finished up by saying, now she's become a top star. I really love working with Julia, and now she's facing Chris Statlander for the TBS Championship. So those were some nice words said by Tony Khan in regards to Julia Hart. And really, she's done a fantastic job from her just from her look to her wrestling ability to her attitude. She's clicking on all cylinders. I would not be surprised if they put that TBS Championship on Julia Hart come Sunday. I wouldn't be mad about it. What's it been? About 4-month reign or so for one Chris Statlander. It's been a decent reign. Again, no fault of her own. It's all solely based upon booking. She's had some notable wins, right? She got that rematch against Jade Cargill the other day. A week or two ago on Rampage, she beat her. She's beaten Ruby Soho and quite a few others. So we'll see what happens. But if they give Julia the push, I'm not completely against that either. One other thing I'd like to mention about AEW is they reportedly found a streaming partner in Warner Bros. Discovery's Max service. Discussing the matter on the Wrestling Observer Radio, Andrew Zarian revealed that AEW is set to make Warner Bros. Discovery's streaming service, previously HBO Max, now goes by Max, its new digital home. Zarian went on to say, I don't have insight on the pricing, but I do have insight. They are going to Max. It is definitely happening in 2024 for sure. Maybe even the December pay-per-view will be on Max. Previously, it was announced that AEW and Warner Bros. Discovery are planning to prolong their TV partnership. Warner Bros. Discovery has expressed great satisfaction with the AEW offerings, and Tony Khan shared that CEO David Zaslav is extremely enthusiastic about the value AEW adds to TBS and TNT networks. In the wake of news surrounding the extended deal, there has been talk of AEW increasing its annual pay-per-view events to 12. Right now, they're typically annually they do 4. Then they added a 5th with Forbidden Door, a 6th with All In, and now 7 if you take into account WrestleDream. So they're well on their way. They already got 7, and they'll just need 5 more, and then we'll have our 12. With Max expected to be the platform hosting these shows. So that's a very interesting bit to note. And finally, right before I hop back into this review, there's one thing I want to note, being that we were just speaking about the House of Black, Julia Hart, and so on. I want to talk about Malachi Black, the leader of this faction, right? Malachi Black released a video, I want to say it was either late Tuesday, early Wednesday on social media, and he went on to say why he isn't having singles matches and being out with a slight calf tear at the moment and knee hyperextension, which is nearly healed. Although in his few years with the company, what's it been? Since July 2021, he has only wrestled 10 singles matches, which to me is crazy. The guy definitely needs to be doing more. AEW really just looks at him as a trios wrestler alongside Buddy Matthews and Brody King, or sometimes in a tag team capacity. But let's be honest, he really needs to start being booked in singles matches. Now, the list of some of the singles matches he's had in those, or in that time rather, the 2+ years with AEW, of course, I believe his initial matchup was against Cody Rhodes, and this is in no particular order, by the way. This is just from the graphics that are presented in front of me. Malachi Black started with Cody, went up against Lee Johnson. I believe he had another match with Cody Rhodes in 2021 that took place at Dynamite Grand Slam 2 years ago. Then this was the third matchup, Malachi Black versus Cody Rhodes 3. So out of those 10 matches, 3 were Cody Rhodes. There's nothing wrong with fighting Cody 3 times, but that just goes to show he's really, had 7 opponents this whole time in singles competition. That's absurd. So Cody 3 times, Lee Johnson, Brian Pillman Jr., now signed to NXT. I was just talking about him the other day on the NXT review this week. There's a little vignette they dropped unofficially, him, but it's definitely him. Brock Anderson, who was one of Malachi's opponents. Brock was also Brian Pillman Jr.'s last tag partner over the summer. Dustin Rhodes, Dante Martin, Griff Garrison, another former tag partner of Brian Pillman Jr. And I believe the final matchup was for the All-Atlantic Championship Tournament. It was a qualifying match against Penta, so which he, of course, won because he was in that Fatal 4-Way at Forbidden Door 2022, where Pac was the inaugural All-Atlantic Champion, now the International Championship. So that's pretty bizarre, pretty absurd, and to be honest with you, if Malachi Black intends on staying with AEW, which I'm not so sure he wants to, even though House of Black is an awesome stable. They just spent several months being the Trios champions until losing at All In to the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass. Um, Again, they have a phenomenal stable. Again, talking Julia Hart, it has legitimately changed her career for the better, obviously. And I hope he sticks around in AEW. But if he wants to go to WWE, work with his wife, Zelina Vega, hey, look, I completely understand it. And I'm sure that they would welcome him back with open arms. Will they utilize him correctly this time around on the main roster? You would hope so, but there's no promises in pro wrestling, right? So what he has now is good, but it can be much better if they start booking him in continuous singles matches. And I also very much enjoy Buddy Matthews in singles as well. You know, seeing him in Andrade go one-on-one a couple of times on Collision early on when the show started early this summer. They had some great matches too. But I would really like to see Malachi better utilized in singles. And then you could just pair up Brody and Buddy in the tag team division while Malachi goes and does his singles thing. I think that's the best approach at this very moment in time. So jumping back to the review here, we're almost finished, guys, I promise. Swerve, Strickland, and Adam Page are in ring with Renee Paquette for a contract signing for WrestleDream. Now, again, outside of the six-man tag match that I've mentioned numerous times, the Don Callis family versus Jericho, Omega, and Ibushi, the match it seems like I'm looking most forward to right now is Swerve Strickland, Hangman Adam Page. Don't get me wrong, I'm not sleeping on the Bryan Danielson, Zack Sabre Jr. match that was supposed to happen Forbidden Door 2022, where Claudio debuted in place of Bryan because he was injured. That's going to be great as well. Long time coming. But personally, I'm very invested in this, especially the mic work back and forth the last couple of weeks. They've really gotten to each other. Swerve has especially gotten to Hangman, really reminding him how Hangman's felt the last year or so personally, right? Talking about, you know, if I had the opportunities that you had, Hangman, if I was in the position that you've been in, I'd be the first black AEW world champion by now. So, you know, that's a could be a very true statement. Very, there's a lot of truth behind that, without question. So anyway, jumping right into this, when's the last time a contract signing went smoothly? I mean, really, you know, things are about to pick up and get very real. So here we are. Swerve says, "Do you know what you're walking into on Sunday? This is Seattle, Washington. This is whose house? Swerve's house." He says, "The 12th man, damn it." Nice Seahawks reference there. And he goes, "This is unlike anything that you've ever dealt with. You are not the wrestler that I am, and I will never be the wrestler that you are." So Swerve goes on to say, "What's a farmer to a mogul? What's a cowboy to an outlaw? What's a buckshot to a kill shot?" That was without question, as good as this whole segment was, that was my favorite part. That was very witty, and you could tell it was definitely getting to Adam Page. He was definitely like, there's a lot of truth in what Swerve's saying. At the same time, I'm a competitor, damn it, and I'm not going to take this. But it was definitely hitting him. He was definitely feeling every bit of this. So Page said, "It sounds like you're fired up and good. You should be." Page goes on to say that Swerve was right about a lot of things he said about him in a previous promo. And that, yeah, for the last year, I felt like I had a little black cloud around my head. But I beat Jon Moxley in a Texas death match. That was at Revolution. It was funny because Renee Paquette was there, Moxley's wife. So he kind of side-eyed her and was like, you know, sorry, but not sorry. He says, "I reunited with my friends in the Elite, and it felt like I should have been the happiest man in the world. But every time I started to smile, that cloud came back around, and it started to rain." But he says he's weathered the storm, he's still here, and that brought something out of him. He said, "These people deserve the best of me, and I deserve it for myself." And I know Hangman Adam Page means every word of that. He knows the last year and change, especially since losing that AEW World Championship to CM Punk at Double or Nothing in 2022. I think he knows that, look, you know, even leading up to that, there's just something missing. I should feel more important than I am. And I hope he does find that intangible to keep him in the main event picture. I don't want to see him flounder in the mid card because he's not an official member of a tag team. Yeah, he could go in the hunt for, you know, the TNT Championship. I think the more prestigious title of the two is probably that AEW International Championship. I think most of us would agree with that. The way that's been booked compared to the TNT Championship over the last few years, even though, you know, TNT Championship has had some very notable names that have held that title, it's just been thrown around like hot potato a little bit, whereas the AEW International Championship, there's only been a few, and there's only been a couple of reigns, and again, Moxley losing to Fenix, only having a week or two reign, that was quote-unquote mistake, right? That was not in the plans, but other than that, you know, they've had significant runs. Pac had a significant run. Orange Cassidy, he was champ for a very long time. He's out there every Dynamite, every week, usually the first match of the night, defending that AEW All-Atlantic, now International Championship. Moxley looked like he was well on his way, and now hopefully Ray Fenix at least gets a lengthy reign with it too, depending upon, when they want to have him drop, because I know he was not the planned champion, but I think they should just let him run with it at least for the remainder of the year, or at least till December. Anyway, he tells Swerve, "You will get the best of Hangman." I think what Hangman should have said or worded that was, "You will get the best of me, but at the same time, you're not going to get the best of me, right? You're not going to beat me." Although I think all signs point to Swerve winning at home in Washington. I think that's how this should go. Regardless, even if Hangman really finds himself, I think Swerve is 1000% the right decision. Swerve hasn't been booked for many pay-per-views, to be honest. Now that he's finally being booked at a first-time pay-per-view, WrestleDream, right, in his home state, I think he deserves a big win over a former AEW World Champion. I think this could really catapult him with some momentum. We never got to see the finish of that, him and Keith Lee for the last year, on and off again, friendship, and then, friends become foes, and then nothing ever really culminated of that, unfortunately, and Keith Lee hasn't recovered since. So after that, Swerve laughs as the crowd chants "cowboy shit" several times. Swerve said, "That's beautiful, but the most pathetic thing I've ever seen." Now, this line rivals the line I really liked of his earlier on in the segment, but he says, "That was beautiful, but the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. That was more pathetic than Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos last week." Of course, if you didn't catch that game, the Dolphins defeated the Broncos 70. That's right, 70 to 20. That was pretty unbelievable. And Swerve says he's going to take his current position from him, talking about Hangman's position in the company, right, in Seattle. And oh, by the way, it rains a lot in Seattle. Of course, Hangman just talking about, feels like he has this cloud over his head and all that, and rain. So Swerve's wordplay is fantastic. I'm not surprised, right? He's a musician. He's an artist. He writes, he raps. I get it. From one guy that is or was in music at one point in time to another, I totally get the mindset, and that's really why his promos have been spot on and fantastic. So Page says, "Regardless if opportunities were handed to me or not, whenever he took hold of it, I knocked it out of the park." He says, "You think you have what it takes to fill my boots, but you don't." Now Swerve slaps Page, signs the contract, but Hangman Adam Page came over and stabbed Swerve in the hand with what looked to be a pen, and like Excalibur said, Swerve signed that contract in blood. So well done there, Excalibur. And I think this match is, again, one of my favorites going into WrestleDream this Sunday. Leads us up to the conclusion of the show. Potentially one of the most intriguing moments of AEW Dynamite on Wednesday. Goes to backstage. We can't see for a little bit who is being attacked on the floor, but we see four men. So we assume they're men, right? Four people, I'll say, wearing all black, stomping out Switchblade Jay White backstage. Now, one of these people were wearing an MJF devil mask that MJF first wore, I want to say, about a year ago or so, when he returned at All Out 2022, right? When the Firm began and stuff like that, when he won the ladder match and all that. But anyway, who knows? Could this be MJF? Personally, I'm leaning towards no. Who are these individuals? I mean, there's a couple people it could be, right? That right off the top, you could think that it is the Kingdom, right? It could be Matt Taven, it could be Mike Bennett, it could be Roderick Strong, and it could have been MJF. Very well could have been MJF. It could have been the four of them. It could have also, if we're not taking into account that saying that it's completely not MJF, you can still say it's the Kingdom's Matt Taven, Mike Bennett, his wife Maria Kanellis, and Roderick Strong. So then you still have the four, right? Even without MJF necessarily being there, even though they used the mask, this could be their way of saying, you know what, we work for you, or we want to align ourselves with you. You be the leader of our faction. And so I think that is a very, very strong possibility, if not any of which I just mentioned. It's a real head scratcher. I really wonder who it can be. I'm very curious that perhaps with Adam Cole now announcing that injury, being out for God knows how long with that broken ankle in 3 places, ligament damage, maybe this is TK, Tony Khan's way of saying, you know what, let me just pull the plug on what we were going to do and have MJF, Roderick Strong, the Kingdoms, Taven, Bennett, and Kanellis all turn on Cole at once and form a faction. Instead of them turning on Cole, maybe they're just completely turning their attention now, redirecting their creative to Switchblade Jay White in this feud, right? And that's how they're going to justify forming this faction without Cole in the picture, because again, Cole's going to be out. This whole Kingdom MJF underlying connection could be irrelevant when they were eventually going to turn on Cole. And again, this also very well could have been Cole leading the Kingdom up against MJF, but it looks like now, regardless, this could be MJF leading this faction, this potential heel stable. I'm very curious to see what happens if that was if that's the change in plans, right? Instead of them all turning on Cole and joining MJF, they all decided to take out MJF's next opponent, seemingly Switchblade Jay White, and then we would get a little rivalry between Bullet Club Gold and whatever the Kingdom and MJF's faction name would be. So I'm really curious to see what happens going forward with this stable. Really curious. But then AEW Dynamite went off air, and I think it was a quality show, a very good go-home Dynamite for WrestleDream. Again, we get a couple matches Friday night, typical AEW Rampage 10 to 11. We're not going to get much as far as what's going to lead to WrestleDream probably, but we will have AEW Collision on Saturday night, which I think will be a very good show, quality show, a nice lead in to less than 24 hours until WrestleDream taking place in Seattle, Washington. So that is my review of AEW Dynamite. Again, solid show. This is the first time in a very long time for AEW that I enjoyed the stuff that wasn't necessarily the wrestling itself. The wrestling was good, right, as it always is on AEW, but the storyline and the mystery and the mystique of it all, Cole being out, who are these individuals that attack Jay White, right? We're going to get Jay White versus MJF at some point. Hangman and Adam Page and Swerve Strickland really revving it up. Again, back to earlier in the night when MJF and Switchblade had that segment with one another. I mean, there's just been a lot of good storytelling and back and forth that I am totally on board for. And so that's that. All right. So thank you for tuning in once again for my review of AEW Dynamite. I'm your host, Pat Dineen, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.